The original PlayStation didn't just define the RPG era. It quietly birthed a golden age of tactical role-playing that most people missed entirely. While everyone was talking about Final Fantasy Tactics, dozens of brilliant strategy RPGs slipped under the radar. Games that combined grid-based combat with rich storytelling, genuine emotional stakes, and ideas so experimental they still haven't been replicated. Some were dark and political, others whimsical and heartfelt. All of them shared one thing. They were ahead of their time, built by teams who believed the genre could do more than push units across a map. Front Mission 3 is a game that asks a deceptively simple question 30 minutes in. Do you go with your friend, or do you stay behind? One choice forks the entire narrative into two independent storylines that share settings, locations, and some events, but tell fundamentally different stories with a different cast of supporting characters. You aren't choosing a difficulty or a character class. You're choosing which war you want to fight. The setting is the year 2112, Southeast Asia, in a Cold War between competing superpowers. The Wanzers are the engine the combat runs on, and the customization system is where the game most rewards investment. Skills are learned not through experience, but by equipping specific mech parts and using them in combat until the pilot internalizes the technique, which means every build decision is also a long-term training plan. Pilots can eject from disabled units and fight on foot or hijack enemy machines mid-battle. A small detail that turns what would be a loss into a tactical opportunity. The combat, however, compared to Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre, feels streamlined almost to a fault. Mission objectives rarely deviate from destroy all enemies, and the simplified structure strips out strategic elements the series had previously developed. The story, for all the intelligence of its branching structure, can feel detached, political, and procedural rather than personal. But Front Mission 3 is one of the few PS1 tactical RPGs that genuinely doubles its runtime with two stories worth telling, and the Wanzer customization loop holds attention across all of it. Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together is the game that Final Fantasy Tactics grew from. Yasumi Matsuno directed and wrote it at Quest Corporation before taking its template to Square and building FF Tactics around the same political philosophy. That lineage matters because Tactics Ogre came first, and in many ways went further. The PS1 version arrived in the West in 1998 under Atlas, and despite its rough localization and the slowdown that plagued complex battles, what it contained was something the genre hadn't seen before. The setting is Valeria, a nation of three ethnic factions whose coexistence collapses after the death of the king who held it together. You play as a young resistance fighter, and the story pivots on a single choice at the end of the first chapter that remains one of the most morally weighted decisions in the genre's history. It isn't a choice between good and evil. It's a choice about what kind of person you are when good options no longer exist. Drawn from the Yugoslav wars and the ethnic conflicts of 1990s Europe, the story carries a real-world gravity that most fantasy RPGs never attempt. The class system, unit permadeath, and alignment mechanics that track not just what you do, but how you do it. All of it feeds into a tactical experience designed around consequence rather than optimization. The honest limitation of the PS1 version is that the rough localization obscures some of the story's depth, and the slowdown in larger battles tests patience in ways the design doesn't deserve. But underneath those constraints is a game that treats war as something with a cost, built by someone who understood that the genre's grid-based structure was the perfect form to show exactly what that cost looks like. If most tactical RPGs are about conquest and politics, Rhapsody, a musical adventure, was about love, charm, and pure whimsy. It's a musical RPG. It's as odd and delightful as it sounds. Featuring full-on vocal numbers, fairy tale storytelling, and tactical gameplay that feels more like a dance than a war, it stood out for being the most unapologetically lighthearted tactical RPG of its era. You play as Cornette, a young girl who can talk to puppets and dreams of finding true love. When her prince is turned to stone by a jealous witch, she embarks on a journey to save him, singing her way through battles and befriending puppet allies who join her party. The story is simple, almost Disney-like, but that's exactly its magic. It doesn't try to be epic or tragic. It just wants to make you smile. It's an RPG that values kindness, creativity, and joy in a genre often obsessed with war and apocalypse. Mechanically, Rhapsody is surprisingly solid. Combat unfolds on grid-based maps, like a simplified FF Tactics, but with faster pacing and musical attacks that give each battle a playful rhythm. You summon puppets to fight for you, customize them, and even combine songs to unleash spectacular performances. It's light, yes, but deliberately so. Beneath the cutesy visuals and catchy songs lies clever design that respects your time and attention. The art direction is stunning, with pastel palettes and watercolor-like environments that feel like pages from a children's book. The fully voiced songs make it one of the first RPGs to truly embrace the idea of being a musical. People at the time dismissed it as too girly or too easy, missing the point completely. Rhapsody wasn't trying to compete with Tactics Ogre or Vandal Hearts. It was carving out its own niche, a heartwarming fairy tale about love and courage. Years later, its influence can be seen in disguised humor and tone. It might have flopped commercially, but emotionally, it's a masterpiece. Cardia. The Word of Fate is one of those PS1 gems that quietly redefined what storytelling in a tactical RPG could be. While it didn't get a lot of attention, it tried to be philosophical, more about creation, morality, and consequence than conquest. It asked a bold question for its time. What if language itself held the power to shape reality? That premise alone made this feel like a work of interactive literature. The world is built on texts of creation, mystical cards that allow humans to summon objects, weapons, and even living beings. You can literally write reality into existence using combinations of Cardia to create everything from swords to monsters. It's one of the most creative and symbolic magic systems ever designed, blending gameplay and theme perfectly. You play through two parallel campaigns, one following Lacrima, a holy knight driven by duty, and another through Toxa, a young idealist guided by emotion. Their stories intertwine, offering two perspectives on faith, love, and destiny. The game's art direction was handled by none other than Yoshitaka Amano, known for his ethereal work on Final Fantasy. His distinct hand-painted character portraits and dreamlike environments give the game a mythic storybook quality. Combined with the somber orchestral soundtrack and deliberate pacing, it feels more like a poetic film than a typical RPG. The tactical combat is turn-based and straightforward at first glance, but the magic crafting system turns it into something far deeper. You can summon phantoms to fight for you, equip them with customized gear, and even determine their lifespan by how they're created. Every command feels like authorship, writing life and death into being. It flopped quietly, but time has been kind. Its story of divine power, hubris, and compassion feels timeless. It wanted to be meaningful. And for players who love strategy with soul, Cardia remains one of the PS1's most thoughtful and beautifully written tactical RPGs. Sayuki, Journey West, is vibrant and bursting with personality. It's a tactical adaptation of the legendary Chinese novel Journey to the West, but with a twist. You play as a female version of the monk, traveling with her companions on a quest to reach India and restore peace to the world. It sounds straightforward, but it transforms the classic myth into a heartfelt, tactical adventure that's equal parts strategy and self-discovery. The game's tactical foundation is solid but distinct. Battles unfold on 3D isometric grids with elemental fields, all affecting unit strengths and weaknesses. But the standout feature is transformation. Each character can transform into a powerful beast form, complete with unique attacks and flashy animations. It's both a clever gameplay mechanic and a reflection of the story's spiritual themes: mastery of self, control of the inner beast, and harmony with nature. What sets Sayuki apart is its cast full of humor, banter, and emotional sincerity. The characters aren't archetypes. They feel like a family, arguing one moment and risking their lives for each other the next. The visual style complements that spirit beautifully. Bright hand-painted textures, expressive sprites, and a whimsical art direction that evokes a storybook in motion. The music, filled with flutes, bells, and soft percussion, reinforces that sense of journey and wonder. Commercially, it was barely noticed, overshadowed by bigger names and dismissed as too simple. But its charm and depth have aged gracefully. Beneath the light-hearted tone lies a surprisingly profound reflection on compassion and faith. Sayuki isn't just an underrated tactical RPG. It's a comforting spiritual road movie in game form, where strategy and storytelling travel hand in hand toward enlightenment. Released in 2000 by Working Designs, Vanguard Bandits is one of those games that completely disappeared under the weight of bigger RPGs, but it didn't deserve to. It's a political drama wrapped in tactical combat, told through mechs, moral choices, and branching storylines. Imagine tactics crossed with front mission and sprinkled with medieval intrigue. That's Vanguard Bandits. It's equal parts grand strategy and character-driven storytelling, where every decision carries both emotional and military weight. You play as a young pilot caught between loyalty and revolution in a war-torn kingdom. The story starts small, personal loss, friendship, revenge, but expands into a sweeping conflict filled with betrayals, shifting alliances, and philosophical clashes. Working Design's localization gives the dialogue warmth and personality, balancing sharp humor with gravity. Unlike most PS1 games, it features branching story paths that lead to multiple endings, each reflecting your choices as a commander and a person. The combat system is simple in concept, but brilliant in execution. You control squads of mechs called attacks, fighting on an isometric battlefield where elevation, formation, and positioning all determine success. Attacks feel heavy and deliberate, each strike framed with a cinematic zoom and weighty sound effects. Strategy isn't just about stats, but about psychology. Will you advance aggressively to end the fight quickly, or play defensively and risk exhaustion? The art design and animations, though limited by hardware, are packed with charm. Character portraits are expressive, and a world design with castles, valleys, and scorched fields feels alive. Its biggest flaw was timing. By the time it released, the PS2 was already on the horizon, and FF had set an impossible benchmark. But today, Vanguard Bandits stands as one of the most underrated strategy RPGs ever made. A game with genuine soul, tactical bite, and the courage to treat war as something more than spectacle. Released in 1998, Brigandine, The Legend of Frisena was strategy on a continental scale, part war game, part political simulation, and completely addicting once you understood it. Most tactical RPGs focused on small battles. This handed you an entire kingdom. You weren't just commanding a few soldiers. You were leading armies, managing territories, forming alliances, and conquering a map of 6 rival nations in an endless push for dominance. It was Risk meets FF tactics, but with its own distinct soul. Each kingdom had its own ruler, backstory, and motivations, noble, tragic, or ruthless. You could play any faction, giving the game enormous replay value and political depth. Its tactical layer unfolded on 2 scales: a strategic overworld where you deployed knights and monsters, and turn-based combat maps where those squads fought for territory. The unit system was where the game shined, recruiting and evolving mythical creatures like dragons, unicorns, and demons to bolster your forces. The sense of scale was unmatched for its time. The visuals, while simple, carried real charm. Crisp sprites, beautiful battle animations, and a haunting medieval soundtrack that made every conquest feel personal. Yet, it never reached a mainstream audience. Released late in the PS1's life, with minimal marketing and limited Western distribution, it was doomed to obscurity. But those who played it never forgot it. Brigandine wasn't just another tactics game. It was a full-blown strategy epic that let you rule a world rather than just fight in it. It's slow, deliberate, and incredibly satisfying once it clicks, a lost masterpiece that deserves far more recognition than it ever got. Long before tactical RPGs became mainstream, Ogre Battle. The March of the Black Queen was quietly pioneering the genre. Originally released on the Super Nintendo and later ported to the PlayStation, this 1997 reissue introduced a new generation of players to one of the most intricate, politically charged strategy experiences ever made. Created by Yasumi Matsuno, the visionary mind behind FF Tactics and Vagrant Story, Ogre Battle blended grand strategy, moral consequence, and deep world building into something that felt less like a game and more like a living history. Set in a war-torn continent, you command a rebel army fighting to overthrow an oppressive empire. But here's the twist. Victory isn't measured just in battles won, but in how you fight them. Every decision, who you liberate, who you kill, and even what time of day you attack, shapes your alignment and reputation meter, determining whether you'll be seen as a savior or a tyrant. It's not just strategy, it's morality in motion. Gameplay unfolds on two scales: a real-time overworld where you deploy units across sprawling maps, and tactical battles resolve automatically based on your formation and character growth. Each unit is a miniature ecosystem of classes: knights, clerics, beasts, undead, each evolving depending on your choices. The joy of Ogre Battle lies in its unpredictability. Every campaign feels unique, every outcome earned through layers of micro-decisions. The writing, dense with religious and political undertones. Its visuals are simple but timeless. Lush pixel art, expressive sprites, and a haunting orchestral soundtrack. It's the kind of game that rewards patience with immersion. You play to lead a revolution. It never sold in massive numbers, but its DNA runs deep through nearly every tactical RPG that followed. Without Ogre Battle, there is no Tactics Ogre, no FF Tactics, no triangle strategy. Hoshigami, Ruining Blue Earth was a rough, uncompromising tactical RPG. Released in 2001 by Atlas, it was brutally difficult, deeply technical, and completely unapologetic about both. For years, it was labeled as too hard, and most players dropped it early. But beneath that intimidating surface lies a brilliant, intricate tactical experience built for players who crave depth and tension. It didn't want to hold your hand. It wanted to test your resolve. The story revolves around Faz, a mercenary dragged into a conflict between warring nations and ancient deities. While the narrative isn't bombastic, it's mature and grounded, focusing on leadership, loyalty, and the weight of decisions in a hopeless war. Every choice feels consequential, and the tone remains somber throughout, a far cry from the colorful escapism of other RPGs at the time. Mechanically, it's fascinating. It features one of the most complex systems ever designed for the genre. The ready-for-action system allows you to manipulate turn order, chaining moves across allies for devastating results. But it cuts both ways, since enemies can do the same. It's the kind of design where mastery feels earned. The magic system adds another layer, letting you cast spells through collectible coins tied to elemental gods. It's dense, layered, and immensely satisfying once you understand it. Visually, it's modest but stylish, clean 2D sprites, atmospheric backdrops, and a strong sense of direction during combat. The camera shifts dynamically during attacks, giving each move cinematic flair. The soundtrack adds haunting, emotional energy to the tension. It flopped because it was punishing and inaccessible, but for tactical purists, that's exactly what made it special. Hoshigami was here to challenge, to make every victory feel earned. It's an RPG that rewards patience and punishes arrogance. For those who stayed, it became a cult classic, a dark, beautiful, and brutally honest game about the price of ambition. Vandal Hearts was one of the first tactical RPGs to hit the PS1, releasing all the way back in 1996, and it set the tone for everything that followed. While tactics often gets the credit for defining the genre, this was already doing it. Tight, grid-based combat, branching classes, dramatic storytelling, and consequences that mattered. It's a game that looks modest on the surface, but plays like a political thriller, filled with betrayal, idealism, and moral corruption. You follow Ash Lambert, a young soldier whose rise through the ranks drags him into a web of lies and rebellion. The writing feels like early Game of Thrones. Every victory costs something, every ally hides a motive. The camera work and dramatic cut-ins give the game a surprisingly cinematic edge, punctuating key moments with emotional impact. Even the blood splatters, stylized and sudden, became iconic, shocking in an era when RPGs were rarely violent. The gameplay is pure strategy satisfaction. Movement is clean, classes are distinct, and every decision carries weight. You can easily lose a character if you're careless, and the difficulty never insults your intelligence. It respects your time, but demands focus. The soundtrack, composed by Hiroshi Tamawari, layers the tension with melancholic horns and driving percussion. It feels like a war movie score. It flopped commercially because it came too early. Players hadn't yet embraced tactical games on consoles. But in hindsight, Vandal Hearts was revolutionary. It's the missing link between Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy Tactics. A fast, emotional, brutally efficient strategy experience that proved the PS1 didn't need flashy visuals to tell a great story. This wasn't just tactics, it was tragedy rendered in 32-bit brilliance. Koudelka was the black sheep of the tactical RPG family. It blended gothic horror, turn-based combat, and cinematic storytelling into something strange, beautiful, and completely unique. Before Shadow Hearts refined the formula, this was the bold experiment that started it all. A moody, theatrical RPG that felt more like a psychological thriller than a strategy game. It was a risk, and commercially it failed. But artistically, it remains one of the most hauntingly original titles of the PS1 era. The story takes place in 1898 Wales, where a young psychic investigates a haunted monastery. There, she crosses paths with two unlikely companions as they uncover the truth behind a series of grotesque, supernatural experiments. The tone is dark, grounded, and deeply human, more influenced by Bram Stoker and Resident Evil than traditional JRPGs. It's a gothic mystery told through rich dialogue and atmospheric direction, complete with pre-rendered backgrounds that ooze tension and decay. Combat unfolds on small, grid-based battlefields. It's slower than most games of its kind, but intentionally so. The pacing mirrors the unease of its setting. Every encounter feels dangerous, every victory earned through careful resource management. What elevates it beyond its mechanics, though, is its presentation. It uses cinematic camera angles, voice acting, and long, deliberate pauses to create mood, techniques that were revolutionary for RPGs in 1999. Its soundtrack is hauntingly beautiful. Minimalist piano, eerie strings, and melancholy silence that lingers after every battle. It was caught between genres, too slow for horror fans, too dark for RPG fans. But looking back, it was visionary, a game that treated story and tone as its primary weapons. It flopped, yes, but also paved the way. Without Koudelka, we wouldn't have the Shadow Hearts series that followed, nor the blend of cinematic storytelling and strategy that later defined modern RPGs. By the time Ark the Lad Collection arrived in North America in 2002, the PS1 was already giving way to the PS2, and that timing almost buried what should have been a celebration of one of Japan's most ambitious RPG sagas. This 4-disc compilation 1 to 3 in Arena, offering not just a series of games, but a continuous narrative spanning generations. It was more than a collection. It was a complete, interconnected epic that defined tactical storytelling long before Mass Effect or The Witcher made continuity a selling point. The brilliance lies in its evolution. The first game feels like a prologue, a short, classic tactical RPG introducing the world and its moral themes. The sequel expands everything, deeper mechanics, layered storytelling, and so the best tactical design of its era. It tells a darker, more complex story about rebellion, identity, and the weight of legacy. Then comes 3, which shifts tone toward a more hopeful journey, focusing on rebuilding in the aftermath of tragedy. Playing them in order feels like watching a decade-spanning movie, one where you grow up alongside its world. Gameplay-wise, it's a masterclass in evolution. 2 introduced free-roaming exploration, branching missions, and intricate skill systems, while 3 refined combat with faster pacing and cleaner presentation. Each character feels distinct in both personality and playstyle, and the sense of continuity, where choices and relationships ripple through the saga, is rare even today. The localization by Working Designs gave it personality, humor, and polish, turning every conversation into something memorable. It flopped commercially simply because it came too late. By 2002, the PS1's time had passed, and few players were willing to dive into a four-game anthology from a fading generation. But for those who did, the collection offered something truly cinematic, a multi-part story about heroes, sacrifice, and hope that played like an RPG box set for the ages.